In the immediate future, we have a speaker to listen to, and I'm very pleased to have an opportunity to introduce an alumnus and long-term supporter of the university and the Terry College of Business, and someone I'm very proud to call my friend, Mr. Pat Pittard. Pat is currently principal of PatrickPittard Advisors, which is a C-level human capital firm. He's an expert in senior-level searches and issues such as recruitment, retention, compensation, and succession. Pat is retired CEO and chairman of the world's premier provider of executive-level search and leadership consulting services, Heidrick & Struggles. During Pat's tenure as CEO of Heidrick & Struggles, he led many successful missions. He was there responsible for the firm's U.S. and European operations merger, for the firm's IPO, for the acquisition of established firms in North and South America, as well as Europe and Africa, for the formation of numerous strategic alliances, and for the creation and development of complementary businesses to add to the firm's core search business. Pat has been chairman of 3 corporate boards, and he's served on numerous others. I won't give you the full list. Pat has been an active supporter of not just UGA and Terry, but of education in Georgia. He served at the governor's request on the Board of Regents. Within Terry, he's been a member of our Board of Overseers, the Music Business Advisory Council, starting that program up. He is currently a member of my advisory council, which we refer to by the acronym TDAC. Pat also teaches for us. He teaches a leadership course each year as part of his service as one of our executives in residence. And we have honored Pat in the past with our Distinguished Alumnus Award. Now, somewhere in his spare time, I'm not sure where, Pat found time to hike the entire Appalachian Trail, and he chronicled his adventures in this book, which is called Barefoot, the Northbounder. I recommend this to you. It is almost as entertaining as listening to Pat himself, but that's what we're about to do. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Pat Pittard.
Thank you, Robert. Adam, am I on? Everybody hear me okay? Okay. If the people in the back are nodding, I know you can. I'm not much of a speech guy, but I'm okay at talking. So I won't go up there because that kind of disconnects us. So I'll stay down here with you guys. That's okay. I'm kind of on a coffee buzz right now. I was on a different time zone, 5-hour time zone up until last night. And so now I'm talking to you at 2 a.m. And it reminds me of when I was in Hawaii. And when I was in Hawaii, and Robert mentioned that I'm a hiker, and I am. When I was in Hawaii, there's a really cool hike where you can hike to volcanoes. You can hike actually to where the magma and the lava flow into the ocean. It's a long hike, and you have to hike over previous lava, which is like an ocean that has been stopped, and with big waves and little waves and high places and low places. So hiking it is not easy. And I was on the opposite side of that 5-hour continuum when I got to Hawaii, and I was hiking at midnight, so my time. And so I got over to a place on the Big Island, which is kind of in the south and kind of in the east part of the Big Island. It's where the volcano is. And I got there 2 hours early. And the lady that ran the little store, we were going to meet there at 8. I was there at 6. And she said, well, have some coffee and just sit here and talk to me and all this. And so she had this Kona coffee. Well, I didn't know what Kona coffee was. It tasted great, I'll tell you that. And so I was drinking that Kona coffee. Well, it was very much like having a shot right in my neck. The highest rated, I don't know. I was on drugs. I could. And so I was sitting there, and she'd walk by, and she said, how you doing? I'm doing fine. I'm just fine. You know, and where's everybody? When are we going to get started? I'm ready to go. Okay, let's go. And she came over with a big old glass of water, and she says, you need to drink this right now. And so I'm feeling a little bit of that in the background right now. I was in the executive search business for a long time. I never stopped being in this. Once you're a search guy, it's like a doctor. Once you're a doctor, you're always a doctor. Not that search is anywhere near as professional as being in medicine, but I've been in search my whole professional career one way or the other. Hate to admit this. 4 decades ago, I was hired by C&S Bank, and only us folks with almost no hair or gray hair even know what C&S Bank was. But it was a precursor to Bank of America. And so it's now part of the Bank of America acquisitions when they collected up all those companies. And I was hired, and I was on this training program. And 10 months into the training program, a guy called me up who ran the training program, and he said, I'm going to go to credit school, so I want you to run the training program. I said, well, hell, I've only been here 8 months. I mean, I don't know anything about the training program. He said, well, you know more than I do, bye. And so I found myself as management development officer for C&S Bank, and I hired 200 trainees every year to come to work for at that time, the largest bank in the South. And from there, I've done differing types of human resource, talent, recruiting kind of things, okay, for the next 4 decades. That includes being CEO of Heidrick and Struggles. That includes being most recently CEO of a startup company called ACT Bridge. And if there's been one thing that there's a paradigm in personal careers that I've discovered, that when your career satisfies you financially, you really know what you love. And if you're satisfied financially and you stay in the work you've always done, you've always loved it. And that's probably why you were successful in it. And so I've never, ever stopped being a search guy. I've done executive searches forever. I did it when I was a CEO of a public company. I still did searches. And after I left, I still do searches, and I'm actually doing one right now for an old client that needs a board member. So that sort of thing has never stopped in me, but there has been one big bright light that has always been in the back of my mind, and I haven't been able to figure it out, is why is there so much wreckage in people's careers? And what are you going to do about it? Okay? Why do so many people find themselves in jobs they hate? Or find themselves in jobs they're not satisfied by? Or find themselves in jobs that they're just using it as a launching point to get the hell out of that job? And what could be done about this wreckage? Because when people are unhappy in their jobs, it doesn't stop at the job site. It goes home with them. It goes to their family. It impacts a culture that is a challenge, that has multiplicity of impacts that we can't even measure today. And so why is there this wreckage? Why can't people find jobs in areas where they can excel in, where they are happy and satisfied, and go home with a feeling of accomplishment and contribution and satisfaction? Why not? Why can't companies maintain turnover rates in single digits rather than 10s and 20s and 30% turnover of people who are dissatisfied in their work? If you have a 20% turnover, that means you've got to hire 120% of the people you need in order to get your work done. Imagine the inefficiency there, the incredible inefficiency. And so I've been curious about science and human resources. Is there a connection somewhere? And I said, well, where would you go if you wanted to find out the best possible processes in science to use in human resource decisions? And I found out you don't have to go anywhere. You can actually get it right there in your own company. Now, last night, because I'm up in strange times when I'm on a 5-hour different time zone, last night I was reading an annual report for a company I own stock in. And the very first thing in the first paragraph of that annual report, that CEO, and I know him, he's a good guy, he is dead straight honest. This is a guy who means what he says. This is a guy who does the right things almost every time. Okay? And he said in his first paragraph that his people were his most important asset. And then he had 50 other pages devoted to how he eliminated people from their jobs. Now, he didn't always say that. He said he would get more efficiencies out of technology. He would get more efficiencies out of mechanization. He would get more efficiencies here, more efficiencies there. And what he didn't say is that meant there were massive reductions in headcount. And I hadn't called him yet, but I'm gonna. And I'm going to say, listen, you know, it's not that I disagree with you. It's just that you've got to wake up and see. What you're basically saying is you need fewer people for larger assets. So your assets are going like that and your headcount's going like that. Okay? Let me give you some other examples. There's not a, everybody will argue this. This is my opinion. There's not a better investment banking company in the world than Goldman Sachs, in my opinion. Okay. To go through the Goldman Sachs training program is to get the elite exposure to being an investment banker. There are extraordinarily good investment bankers that didn't go through that, but I think most of them would say, listen, if I had a young son coming out of the graduate school of business, I'd want him to go to work at Goldman Sachs. Okay. Goldman Sachs announced last week that they're not going to have an investment banking school coming out of the college ranks every year. They're going to have it every other year. They're going to do what they've always done with their investment bankers handling more assets with less headcount. Another paradigm that's colliding with that one, with the fact that corporations are reducing headcount, is there's this young, vibrant, experienced group of workers that are moving into the American scene that have never been there before. And they're the 65 and older. The very first thing I said, young. Those people, I'm one of them, those people have, and I work on an life insurance company board, so this is not something I'm pulling out of the air. This is factual. A person who is alive on their 65th birthday is probably going to live till their 88th birthday. One that doesn't smoke is going to live to their 92nd birthday. So those people at 65 are only 2/3 of the way through their life. They're like 45 20 years ago. That's how far medical science has gone in 20 years. Okay? They're competing for jobs that you, Ms. Carr, want. You're no longer just competing with other graduates. You're now competing with somebody 65 that's done the job 20 years. And the company is saying, who do I want? So there's that paradigm. So there is a new, large, well-trained group of folks that are seeking job openings, and they're competing like never before. Just another quick thought to put in my point. That there are fewer Americans on a percentage basis working than ever in American history today. All right? Okay. They're also competing on a global market. I'm going to bring all this together. I know it sounds kind of mixed up right now. But let me give you some big concepts, and then I'll bring them all together, and I promise it'll make sense at the end. There's something called uninformed self-selection. Okay. What is uninformed self-selection? Well, I'll tell you, Ken Thrasher, it's when you and I were picking our careers when we were coming through our life. We were uninformed, but you decided you wanted to be an accountant, and I decided I wanted to be a football coach. Okay? And so you turned out to be a hell of a lot better accountant than I turned out to be a football coach. And so, you know what I found out about football? I'm sorry about that. Is that it was fun on Friday nights. The rest of the time was drudgery. You know? You were in a place that smelled bad. Okay? You had to tape these children's ankles you had to get in there 2 hours before football and tape ankles. And if you were a good coach, you would run a new play over and over and over and over and over again. And you do that, and you get an attention span like that, that's not a good match. Okay? So I did it 5 years. I enjoyed it. I was a teacher who also coached rather than the opposite. And so I was going to move. If I had stayed in teaching, I would have stopped coaching, because I love teaching. But I found out that I love sports, but I'm not a good coach. And my brother said, oh, well, you're a professional coach and all this. Will you come over and help me coach my son's T-ball team? And I said, sure, I would. I love Chris. He's my nephew. I'm going over there. I'm going to do it. And so my right fielder was sitting down with his car going like this, and the ball's being hit. And I look over at Buddy and I said, this probably isn't right for me. I probably not, before I kill that right fielder, you better get rid of me. So, but where was that, by the way? Okay. So you are selecting, you select your careers on the scantest information. You select what you major in on the scantest amount of information. I promise you, you spend more time studying a car purchase than you do studying taking care of your own career. And so you are making uninformed, but you're free to make, in America, you're free to make your own career selection. Well, if you're going to make a career selection, shouldn't it be informed? Shouldn't you know about yourself? Shouldn't you know about what your skills are, what you're good at, and how that matches up with what's out there in the job market? Wouldn't that be good? Wouldn't that be a better way of finding out about it than taking the job and saying, oh, shit, this is awful, okay? And so that's uninformed self-selection, okay? I believe that we owe it to you, and we owe it to every job seeker, that they be informed. And the part of it they're not informed in is what are my skills? Let me give you an example of a skill. One of the key cognitive skills. By the way, there is the industrial psychologist, which, by the way, the University of Georgia produces the best industrial psychologist in the country. I mean, that's just fact. It's always ranked in the top 5, and it's often ranked as the best. Okay, so industrial psychologists say this: the number one predictor of workforce success is having the right cognitive skills. The number one predictor of workforce success as an employee is having the right cognitive skills. Well, that's great. Okay, that makes sense. Duh, what's a cognitive skill? You know, first time I heard that, I said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As long as I knew what cognitive skills meant, then I could make the whole sentence make sense. And so I found out, and cognitive skills are things that you can learn and things that you can teach and things that become part of your skill toolbox that you don't even know you're building. Okay. Cognitive skills have strange titles like learning by listening, learning by observing, learning by reading. Do you know of those 3 things which one you're best at? Observing, reading, or listening? Do you know which of those? I bet you don't. I bet you have an opinion. Okay. Do you know of those 3, if you're a nurse, what you need most? The skill is called observation. That's the number one you need. That's the number one skill you need if you're a nurse. That's the cognitive skill you need. More than anything else. Technology is way up there these days for a nurse. So that's a second cognitive skill. Gosh, we haven't even talked about going to nursing school yet. We're talking about, are you a good observer and do you have capacity for technology? If you don't have those 2 things, you're probably going to fail as a nurse, no matter whether you made straight A's in nursing school, no matter whatever else. If you have low skill sets at those 2, you're probably going to fail. Okay. If you have a level of high observation, shouldn't you know if you have that level? If you're seeking to go to nursing school? And shouldn't the hospital, before they hire anybody or promote anybody into a nursing position, shouldn't they know if this candidate has this observation skill? I know of one hospital group in the country that tests for observation skills for their nurses. They have single-digit turnover in their nurses. They have, you know what an incident rate is in a hospital? It's when the hospital screws up and kills somebody. That's an incident rate. They have one of the lowest incident rates in the country. This one hospital. This one hospital is in a hospital chain of 60 hospitals. And they only one of their hospitals does this. Okay. Now the other hospitals in the chain say, what are you guys doing there in Grand Rapids? You know, what are you guys doing? So there is kind of something that's planted there in this hospital chain that probably will spread out over the 60. But the point that I'm trying to make is, when was skills brought up in your high school? It wasn't, right? So there is science out there. There is process out there. Lean Six Sigma is a process. When Lean Six Sigma was developed, and I think it was starting to be developed by Booz Allen scientists about 1980. But it started really to impact corporations about 1990, something like that. Lean Six Sigma did not invent any new processes, nothing. Nothing new was invented by Lean Six Sigma. All these processes were already out there. And what they did is grab them, bundle them into an organized process that basically eliminated waste. Wasted time, wasted materials, waste. Eliminate waste, and your process is going to get a lot better. Whether it's a service, whether it's a manufacturing facility, things are going to get better if you eliminate waste. And they're right. Supply chain management is a new process, but nothing within that process was new. Everything that they implemented in that was already out there in some form, and they put it together in one type of scientific process called supply chain management. All supply chain management does is eliminate steps between the manufacturer and the customer. That's all it does. The distribution between here and here ought to be 2 steps when it's perfect, 3 steps when it's really good, but not 6 steps, which is the way it works in most corporations. And if you get rid of warehouses and truck time and a whole bunch of other stuff and supply chain management, and you bring the customer and the manufacturer, or you can manufacture something that's a service, and if you bring those distribution lines together, you're going to have a better product, a happier customer, all this other kind of stuff. And it revolutionized logistics, changed everything. Lean Six Sigma has done the same thing to any kind of process that a corporation does, has done the same thing. Okay, where's the aha moment in human resources? There ain't one. Are we treating our people as well as we do a cardboard box? Well, we're not. We put much more science in a cardboard box than we have in the selection of our people. When I was that pup at this little bitty job that I had in this bank that doesn't even have the same name anymore, 4 decades ago, the process and the science and the testing that I used 40 years ago is what's being used today. Something that I called the cleaver 40 years ago is called DISC today. Same test. Exactly the same test. Has science not come forward at all in 40 years? Not in human resources. Not in human resources. So we're talking about what I consider in corporations as what I call process inertia. If you do budgets, and you've done it this way always, and you say 30% turnover is okay, and you build it all in, and you build it in for years after years after years, it's very hard for somebody to say, hey, let's take your human resource department, same head count, I'm not talking about eliminating jobs here, I'm talking about let's do this with them. Let's don't have them spend all their time on hiring people to high turnover. Let's spend the time of making the people that are hired successful. Let's make every person that's hired here successful. And let's make sure that we have the engineering to do that. And let's be sure, by the way, when we hire people, we hire them for the proper things. You're going to get the wrong answer if you ask the wrong damn question. Are you hiring people for personality or capability? If you've got an interviewer and a human resources person that comes out of the office and said, I really like that guy, who gives a damn whether you liked him or not? That's not what you're hiring. That's not what you're being paid to do. You're being paid to find somebody that's going to be successful in that position. And you liking them? By the way, I don't like you. So why do I care who you like? So, but the point of it is that do we hire for personality rather than capability? So what I am doing is I'm insulting my own industry. I'm saying that the thing that I have done, have I come out of my office and said, I really like that guy? You bet your bums I've said that. I've made the same mistake. And I thought that I was so omnipotent that the fact that I liked them made them a good candidate. So, all right. I don't test well. This is another big concept. If you've ever said, I don't test well, you basically meant, on what this test was testing for, I'm no good at that. So, have you ever said somebody that made 1,100 on the SAT, have you ever heard them say, oh, I was up at a party all night the night before, and I woke up at 5 o'clock, and I said, oh my God, I've got this 8 o'clock test to do, and I run to. I've heard that story so many times that nobody made 1,100 on their SAT because they're just 1,100 smart. I've never heard anybody say, I made 1,100 because I'm just average intelligence. No, they were drunk the night before, or, you know. So there's always a good story behind an 1,100 or lower. And so the reality of it is tests really test pretty well. And if they nail you at an 1,100, you're probably average intelligence. And by the way, if you want to be a CEO, that's the number you want. You don't want to be a 1,400 because you're going to be in the back doing actuarial stuff. Okay? If you want to run companies, you better be higher mid-intelligence, smart enough, aggressive enough, maybe smart enough to not realize you can't do what you're about to do. If somebody had told me when I became a CEO, you can't take this company public, every partner carries a card in them that says they'll never go public. And those partners will never vote for you to take this company public. Well, I was too stupid. I was the perfect CEO. My partners were smart enough to elect me as CEO because I was too stupid not to be one. So now I know being a CEO ain't that much fun. The last thing, or there's two more things that I want to talk about, and one is career velocity. The career velocity is how fast you go through a series of jobs. There's been, about in the 90s, one of the best-selling business books around was one that was called The War for Talent. It was actually written by a bunch of McKinsey guys, and the guy that kind of read it was this brilliant guy that happens to live in Atlanta by the name of Ed Michaels. And Ed is just scary smart and good, fine person on top of that, and a long-time McKinsey fellow. The War for Talent had to do with there's only so much talent, and there are these organizations and corporations that need talent so badly. And what they basically said is that the supply for talent is going down, the need for talent is going up, and there's presently a war for talent that's going to end up being in a world war for talent. And that's what essence. I read the, whatever you call it, the book when it's not quite out yet, and the author says, will you read this? And he asked me to write a little something for the dust cover. And I thought it was a brilliant book, and I could get my administrative assistant to make it sound right, but I wrote, this is awesome, But she made it, she put like 3 sentences in it. It sounded a lot better when she was through with it. But I thought it was awesome, okay? Let me tell you, the war for talent is now a skirmish, not a war. Okay, lots of talent out there. And what that does is that means that people stay in jobs longer. They actually have to produce a cycle now before they're promoted. Okay, they have to produce maybe 2 cycles before they're promoted. Actually, promotions are done a lot better now than they used to be done. Okay, what testing process and science do you go through to get promoted? 0. What is the first debacle of internal promotion in the workforce? It's the person who goes from an employee, colleague, team to the supervisor. That's the biggest failure promotion in American business. Because the skills of being a supervisor are almost diametrically opposite of the skills of being a good team member. About 50% of promotions from colleague to supervisor fail. And it fails three ways. It fails for the person who took the promotion. They've gone from being the best employee at their level to a failure. Okay? It fails that the people that work for him are unhappy and poorly led. And it fails because the best employee at this level is now gone. We don't compensate for the non-management person that excels. The way that we compensate for that person is we promote them into a job they'll fail at. And by the way, we don't test them to find out if they're going to succeed. And by the way, if we test them and find out they have a shortage, do we then remediate them, give them the skills? Because remember, cognitive skills can be taught. Observation can be taught. Learning by listening can be taught. Shouldn't we find out that somebody we're considering for a promotion from colleague to supervisor has the skills to handle the supervisory job? And if they don't, we need to talk to him, we need to counsel with him, and we say, listen, we think you're great and we think you'd make a good supervisor, but by the way, you're a little short on some skills, and we need to put you in some classes and some schools and skill you up before we put you in a job that you'll fail at. Do we do that? Now, another day, if I'm ever invited back, having come, this is my second time here, by the way. The first year of Terry Third Thursday, when it was over in another building and there was about 15 of us sitting around the table talking, one of the first Terry Third Thursdays, before I became chairman, the chairman of my company at Heidrick and Struggles, a guy by the name of Jerry Roach, and I came and spoke to people about executive search and talent, 15 years ago. So this is my second time. So if I could do the triple play, I'll come back at some point in time and tell you what I think, all of what we've talked about this morning, what the implications is on education. Because here's a guy that was a public school teacher for 5 years. Here's a guy that's been teaching in colleges for 10 years, 11 years. I believe in education. I was chairman of the University of Georgia's Foundation. I was vice chairman of the Board of Regents. I have spent my time, I've spent my resources believing in education, so I believe in it. But what are the implications to this wreckage that we all know about to education? How relevant is education to workforce success? And I got to tell you, folks, it's not a pretty picture. It's not. So you've got to go back. If you believe in supply chain management as a logistical science, what about talent supply chain? And education has delegated all corporate training to the corporations. And so they've basically said, we don't help people get a good job. That's not what we do. That's what they've said. They've said it with their feet because they said, we're not changing. And we're not going to be applicable and credible and relevant to their careers. That's not our job. Well, who the hell's job is it? And somebody ought to have been sticking their finger in my face as a high school teacher and say, how are you helping this kid be a success in life? So anyway, so there's a lot to do. I need another life. I need a different actuarial chart, So 88 ain't enough, 108 might be enough, It depends when they say, well, Dad, we found this great home for you. Okay. and I'll say, you know what a walkabout is? You know, if you know anything about Aussie history, when men get older and less relevant, they do a walkabout. And they put their backpack on, and they go inland, and in most cases they're never seen again. And at least by their families and their loved ones. So of the chapters in my life, you know, the last one is going to be the walkabout, because I'm not going to go to the home. So I got 3 now that I don't go to, so why would I want to go? So I got 3 houses and I live in a condo. What do you think? So, okay, I'm supposed to do a Q&A here, and I know that in a group this big, it's hard to be the first person to ask a question. So I'll call on Ms. Carr. What question do you have? So,
as you're calling on people, Pat,
yeah.
Since we're recording this for a podcast, please get a microphone.
I didn't know that. You should have given me that disclaimer before, because I used 2 bad words, and I didn't mean to, but I did. So
we've got microphones that we'll bring around the room, so if you raise your hand when you've got a question, but we will give the first microphone to Sarah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sarah again. Mr. Pittard, what, for someone graduating into this job market, with a job, what would be your, I guess, recommendation to hit the ground running in your career?
Well, first of all, you could be in my class when we're doing the list of 21 and the 21 things you need to do to be a multimillionaire. I think that hit the ground running is maybe not the right way to put it. I think that make the right steps to be a success is a better way to put it. And it's my opinion that you've got to make a hard decision whether you want to lead. Because the paths of leading and being a team member and a colleague, most investment bankers at Goldman Sachs are not leaders. They're self-producers. They're extraordinarily well compensated. They have very rewarding lives, but they don't lead. And so you have to make the decision whether you want to be those one that lead, because the paths are very much different. And if you're one of this leadership junkies like I am, and if you do something, if you're on the Board of Regents, you want to lead it. You know, if you're on the UGA Foundation, you want to lead it. And if you're a partner at Heidrick and Struggles, you want to be CEO. And those people are sick, but there's a lot of people like that out there that thinks they're like that. But I think you've got to make that decision early in life. And you probably already know. Because leaders usually don't select themselves. They're usually selected by the people around them. And so if you find yourself leading your Cub Scout group when you were 8, you know, that's if you're captain of your baseball team, if you find yourself in leadership all through your life just because it was a natural thing that was happening to you, you probably also want that. Because if you're going to lead, it's a different path. And you and I are going to speak afterwards, and we'll talk about the difference in that path. The issue that I've got with my students who are graduating now comes down to they're filled with a bunch of conflicting information up until the time they get into their career path. So they have to decide for themselves. And I feel it comes to effort and work ethic. And if you want to blend in with your team and be a good team member and all this other kind of stuff, then you're going to work at that team's pace. When I hiked the Appalachian Trail, I chose to hike alone. Because if you hike in a group, you're going to hike to the speed of the slowest hiker in your team. and you're going to stop everybody every time anybody on the team needs to tie their shoe. And I didn't want to walk to the slowest person, and I didn't want to stop when he tied his shoe. And so, and that's an attitude of a leader versus an attitude of a team member. You know, there's a lot of people that says, you mean you walk 2,200 miles by yourself for 6 months? Yeah. I'm okay with that. So, it's not for everybody. So, that was a dollar answer to a nickel question. So, yeah. And we got another one here and another one over there. Okay, yeah.
I've heard that my name is Thompson Jennings. I've heard that the secret to success is late to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise. What would you add to that?
Well, it's catchy. I do think that for all my career, I'm the person that turned on the lights and filled up the coffee pot. I just was. And I never looked at my watch when I left. I just left when I was through that day. And it might have been 4 and it might have been 9. So I do think just plain old hard work leads to success in a lot of ways. But that doesn't mean that you've inserted yourself in the right job to maximize your career. And it doesn't mean that your company has gone through the process of making sure that you are the right fit for that job. So that's the paradigm that I think that we as Americans have to work on. It's being worked on in other countries, and it's been having great success. We're getting our butts kicked in the global marketplace right now. And it's pretty much top to bottom. It's in talent management, it's in education, it's in all kinds of other areas, and then it turns out to be productivity. And if you say, how can you say that the global economy has higher productivity than America? Well, we're offshoring. That's how you say it. We want somebody to fix it right. When somebody wants an iPhone built right, they use Chinese. You know, they use, what's Foxworth or Fox something, that Fox Corporation that has 15 million employees. Yeah, Foxconn. Well, they're the ones that build the iPhone. So another bad answer. Yeah.
Pat, you talked about Goldman Sachs and then your startup company, ACT Bridge. What are your thoughts on the experiences gained at a large company like Goldman Sachs versus the experience for a startup or a smaller company?
Well, these are my values, so they may not fit yours. I think big companies are for training, small companies are for careers. You know, and learn what you have to learn, get basic knowledge in a big company, then get the hell out of there, you know, before you get big companyized, you know. And so there's folks like me and a couple of buddies in this room that wouldn't think of working for a big company. I mean, just wouldn't. And that doesn't mean that they have to own it or run it. Even just working for it has an entirely different culture. And the speed from concept to delivery is much tighter in a smaller, and you get to see your ideas bloom. Sometimes your ideas are on Wednesday and you see them out there on Monday. And so for me, to get trained in a big company, and I did, and then go out into a smaller company environment. I think both in satisfaction and in financial reward. This is a country of entrepreneurs. We have about a third of our entire economy that's run by organizations with 15 or less employees. So that's the world you live in. And so there's security in a big company. There's health care. There's all kinds of security. I don't know how secure that is anymore. But, no, next question. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Pat, for a very informative and entertaining speech, and thanks for answering those questions. On behalf of our alumni board, I want to present you with this glass sculpture, which was made by Loretta Eby, a local artist. So, thank you, Pat.